discussion today that we are calling Year End in July. And before I actually get to what is Year End in July and why we're doing it, I'd love for my amazing panelists to introduce themselves. So I'm actually going to go from left to right on my screen. So Matthew, you are the first one I can see. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do at Pursuant and Allegiance Group and your expertise.
Sure. Thanks, Leah. I am Matthew Milcarrick. I lead the Insights team at Pursuant, and I help to bring the voice of our donors into our client strategies.
Yeah. And then Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. I'm Joe McLaughlin. I head up the analytics and optimization department at Allegiance Group. So working with our clients to really ensure that we're using as much data and information as we can to generate strategies that will actually raise them more money and engage more donors and do all those kind of fun things that we love to work on. So.
Yeah. And Becca?
Hi, and I'm Becca Gregory Segovia. So nice to be with you guys today. I lead the software division at Allegiance Group and Pursuant. I have a passion, as you guys know, because you've heard me on the podcast, around data-driven strategies that help us connect with donors and really understand what their case for support is, why they give to us so that we can create a better relationship with them and hopefully drive greater giving and lifetime value.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So like I said at the top today, we are kicking off a new series that we're calling Year End in July. And Becca, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of the idea behind this series, why we're doing it now, why we're talking about year end in the middle of the year, and just kind of set the stage for us.
I don't know about you, but when I think about year-end fundraising, I often like to back the time up just to see, like, what should I be doing inside my organization strategy as I think about what needs to take place in order for a donor to make a gift at year-end. And so as we did our introductions, we talked about the donor insights that we like to glean throughout the year. And it's really about building that relationship, a personalized relationship with each individual member of your file, and to be able to do that potentially at scale. So we have relationships in a general fund, if you will. So those people that may be giving $25 or $30 every so often. We have relationships at the mid-level, major. We have some transformative relationships inside our organization, and to really understand, where are they now? And so if we were to kind of take December 31st as the goal and work our way back, we found ourselves talking about, when you see Christmas in July, maybe this is the time to start talking about fundraising, because the work that we do throughout the summer and stewarding and engaging with our donors is important. And then we head into that season of typically acquisition in September and October as we think about how do we invite new people into our fall activities. Do we have time to spend time with them and convert and steward them into what becomes really the year-end fundraising event, which is now kicked off with Giving Tuesday at the end of Thanksgiving. And then we kind of head through to the end of the year with being able to steward and engage our donors through that year-end experience. And so how do we kick that off in a way where we can be really thoughtful and intentional? So we're going to steal from the marketplace of Christmas in July and say, what does it look like to have fundraising strategy in July as we think about year-end? So
I love the heart behind that idea, especially because the summer is a little bit of a slower time for a lot of organizations. But then as soon as that time for year-end planning kicks in August and September, things can just feel like really frantic. And so I love the idea of starting to get those kind of creative juices flowing now while you may be sitting by the pool or enjoying some time away from the office, to be able to come into that planning season really, really prepped and strong.
Build a plan and then work the plan. I love it.
Exactly. All right. So our main topic today, the kind of topic for our first episode of Year End in July, is data. And we say it over and over again until we're blue in the face that data should drive strategy. And we're hearing it more and more from our nonprofit clients as well, that they really want to look at what the numbers are telling them first and then build from there. And so kind of that first data point that I think we all like to consider first when it comes to our donors is, well, who are they? What do they look like? What do they care about? Where do they live? What are their ages? What are, what are their general demographics? So what are some specific ways, and Becca, I'd love for you to answer this first. What are some specific ways that nonprofits can leverage both the information that they have and information that's out there to personalize their year-end fundraising campaigns?
Yeah. I really love this question. So the first thing that I would share is most organizations already use data to drive their year-end strategy, really any of the strategies that they're running. Typically, we've seen that be an RFM strategy. So recency, frequency, monetary. And so we're looking at how recent people have been giving. We're looking at the frequency of that gift, and then what's that monetary value. And then we're saying, okay, we're going to put them into the segment. And that's a good thing. It is kind of been what our tradition is. The challenge with that, in my opinion, is that it is looking at first party data only. And we live in a world where we have the ability to collect additional data points on our constituent base. And so we can look at both zero and first party data. That zero party data is data that they're giving out. They're telling you what their preferences are. They're telling you what their case for support is. They're telling you how they want to be communicated with. And that first party data of how much they're giving, that RFM data that we were talking about. And so that can be really meaningful to just be able to respond to people in the areas in which they are currently engaging with you. I think where the magic happens is when you can do some additional segmentation and hyper personalization based on what you know about that donor. And so that's where augmented data or third party data can play a role in that. And so things that you can ask about are, what are the demographics of our file? And we may want to segment based on age, because the way that someone might give in their 40s and 50s and 60s may look different than how they might give, or the ask that we might put in front of them if they fall into a younger demographic. You may want to look at number of kids in household. So my message to people that have kids in household, is there something in my cause that they can relate to, or do I maybe reposition the dollar figure that I'm asking based on what I know about all that other data? Where are their interests? Where do they currently give? Where do they align with our case for support? And so if I'm an education institution, as an example, do they currently give to education? What types of education? Maybe it's an art school, and so I want to put an art ask. Maybe a school that has an art program, and maybe that's the right case for support to put in front of them because that's where their passions lie. So that's an example of being able to look at interest, understanding what their philanthropic priorities are as a whole. What potentially cash that they may have on hand, so predicted discretionary income may also inform what level of ask I may want to make, what channels might they be interested in receiving data in. We know that we live in an omni-channel environment today. And so how do I prioritize with the budget that I have the right channel with the right message, with the right ask at the right time? And so I may want to lead with a certain group and a certain demographic, age or affinity, and say, okay, I'm going to lead with digital. And if I don't get a response there, then I may jump to phone before I jump to mail or some other way to connect with them. And so I think being able to use that third party data in conjunction with the zero and first party data that you already have can really change the game in your segmentation and how personalized you can get in your messaging. And again, as we started when I introduced myself, I think it's really about understanding their case for support and connecting the dots on how your organization is in alignment with theirs. And so I think data can be a game changer.
I love that, Becca. And something that, strikes me in a great place for folks to start is to ask, what's the profile of people who gave to our end of year campaign last year? Maybe it's somewhat different, maybe it's dramatically different than the overall donor profile. But at the same time, you can use demographics to build unique segments of individuals and understand different giving behavior. So, similar questions are our pandemic donors, were they different looking than our overall donor file? Are our monthly donors different? And in doing that and in understanding some of those demographic profiles of folks who've given previously, that can help folks today to start planning for what they're doing ahead and in the future as well.
Another question that I would love for us to look at, and Matthew would love to get your take on this first, and then Joe, if you've got any additional insights to share as well. So we've talked about some different data points that we can look at. We've looked at some different data points that you can examine with demographics. But what are some like strategies that organizations can employ to actually identify and analyze giving patterns to make the biggest possible impact on their year-end fundraising? So like previous giving data, or maybe some like segments that are prime for reactivation. What are just some additional strategies that you can use with your data to maximize that year-end impact?
Yeah, I mean, the first place that I would start is kind of with the fact that there's no better predictor of this year's campaign performance than last year. So, I would jump in and make sure you have a handle of last year's campaign performance. That's vital to planning. But even more broadly, I would seek to really have an understanding of the philanthropic landscape today. And I would actually look at broader year-over-year performance. So how have we been performing this year versus last year? And again, I think that can give us some insight into where we're headed into the year end, what we can expect, what we need to be messaging to our boards, to the leaders within our organizations. But at the same time, I would also caution folks to take an even broader long-term perspective, because I know for many, 2022 was a really rough year. If I think of the headlines that were actually in place towards the end of last year, as many of our peers were in market, it was tough. And so I would encourage folks to look back even further, take a longer term perspective, looking back even pre-pandemic to broad trends from 2019 and beyond, to look at where your organization is headed. So that's kind of one area. The other is I would make sure that you have an understanding of external performance by other organizations beyond your own. And so I would say the Giving Tuesday organization, of course, is an amazing resource to show the growth of Giving Tuesday over time. And despite a lot of the challenges that many organizations had last year, Giving Tuesday excelled, and there was strong growth there, even though end of year for many organizations sort of fizzled out, either in the sense that major gifts didn't manifest, or individuals backed off as we were headed towards the end of the year. So understand Giving Tuesday performance over time as well. And then to your point, Leah, those individual components, certainly donor records, transactions, and then also campaign performance to inform, that those broader picture trends are really important.
Yeah, the one thing I would definitely add on, and this is, I'll probably come back to this a bunch of times as we're talking here, is my big thing, but as the data guy, one of the best investments that I can recommend to clients is really locking down their data hygiene and their business rules practices so that they can develop that full understanding of their past campaign performance, right? If the only thing that we have to look at is dirty or messy data from the last several years or the last several campaigns, it becomes way, way harder to really leverage any of that to inform any future strategies. And so I think, it's never flashy, but being able to have some of those processes in place to be able to say, this is the revenue that came from this campaign, it came from this audience, it came from this package drop, and being able to slice and dice the data up that way is incredibly helpful to be able to identify where are their problem spots within a campaign, or conversely, which audiences are doing really well and we should double down on them, and really to be able to maximize success. So I think,
hallelujah. I
figure anybody who spends their time in data is probably going to agree with this one, but the more you can do to clean your data and to institute some of these like business rules so that it's consistent year over year over year, it enables us to do a lot of that, long-term trend tracking, like Matthew, you were saying as well.
Yes, amen to that. And I love that you were talking about making sure, I'm gonna say this differently. Amen to that. There is something that you called out that I think is also important. We were talking about zero and first party data. Like, make sure that you have a place where you're capturing how people are engaging with you, meaning, like, are they opening your emails? Are they attending your events? Are they volunteering for you? Are they advocating for you? And if you're able to look at all that data, in addition to the things that Matthew and Joe have talked about, now you're getting a real full picture of who they are, what they care about, and it can transform the way that you go about driving. I think Leah said at the beginning, data drives strategy, but really data drives through the lens of your organization, the creative experience, the strategy, and then the end results. And so getting that 360-degree view is so very important. And you can't do that if you aren't actually A, capturing it, and B, have it in your data where you can use it in a meaningful way. Data hygiene. So thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that.
With that, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up for today. Thank you, Matthew, Joe, and Becca, for a little bit of time tuning in to give our viewers and listeners some wisdom as we're starting to hit that